The next game we're talking about is Dead or Alive 3, which was nominated by @MikeNieto on Twitter. Game was developed by Team Ninja. It was published by Tecmo for the Xbox. Its earliest known release date is November 15th, 2001 in North America. That is the sum total of my Dead or Alive 3 knowledge.
So the rest of us kind of played this game, including Weasel, who picked up, I believe, the actual game to play on a physical Xbox. So if you're watching the video version of this, you're watching his footage, so thank him for that.
And you can also thank me for being really bad at it, because, let's be honest, I am really bad at it, but it's not really obvious from the footage.
We're called hardcore gaming, therefore everything we do must be hardcore.
Which is good that we're talking about Dead or Alive, because obviously it's very difficult to get around the sort of baggage that Dead or Alive has at this point. But there was a time when it wasn't quite that.
Yeah, this was before the first Extreme Beach Volleyball spin-off, right?
Yeah.
So what this game actually was a very early Xbox release. Obviously a follow-up to Dead or Alive 1, but especially Dead or Alive 2 and Dead or Alive 2 Extreme or whatever. I can't remember what they called the PlayStation 2 release.
Dead or Alive 2 Hardcore, appropriately enough.
Really? Okay, so this is Dead or Alive 3, and it is mostly a upgrade revision with some extra stuff shoved into it for compared to Dead or Alive 2, as you expect from most fighting games. You know, it's an iterative release. They added 4 characters, I think. They don't think they took anyone out. They changed the combat system a bit. You know, counters are much easier to pull off, very forgiving and very damaging. Possibly not the best change ever, but we'll maybe talk about that. They simplified the fighting system in a way, but they also kind of made it a little bit more complicated.
Did you just say the word simplified?
It's not my fault. It's hot here. Please help me. Dead or Alive 3 and kind of the franchise, especially at this point in time, sat at kind of the fourth musketeer, I would say, of 3D fighting games. It kind of, you know, you had Tekken, Virtual Fighter. I think Soul Calibur maybe would be kind of like the third sort of thing, or Soul Edge. Then there was Dead or Alive, and it was like, okay, well, there's also Dead or Alive. like, this wasn't most fighting game fans' first preference, but this is an interesting game because it's not necessarily the fighting game fans' fighting game. It is actually more of a general sort of person fighting game. You know, if you don't like fighting games, or you just want to play a puncho game, this is actually the game for you.
It's a game that you could basically hand this to your 10-year-old brother and tell him, okay, this one punches, this one kicks, this one does the cool thing button.
You'd also have to explain a few other things to your 10-year-old brother.
The game's controls are very, very simple, as Weasel's playing. I think it's like literally 3 buttons, and everything else is just a shortcut to multiple button presses, which is interesting.
Brother?
Yeah, you're not going to be spending...
Weird. This is uncomfortable and awkward.
Well, the point is, you're not going to be spending like half an hour to an hour in the training mode trying to learn how to play your character, because you can pretty easily just figure it out as you play.
This game's very button-friendly, and I think that's why the counter system is so prevalent in it. Because if you are not paying any attention, you're just mashing buttons, the other person's going to be like, all right, counter. He's going to hit the counter button, you're going to get flipped on your ass, and that's how you play.
It's like no character is quite Eddie Gordo from Tekken 3, who's infamous for his mashability, but it does seem to have a bit of an easier accommodation, and also a little more faster pace than, I think, Tekken Virtua Fighter.
Well, the moves are very impact, very punchy, you know, every hit is just like, punch, punch.
There's some nice Foley work here, yeah.
And then, the end of a combo is often, a move that knocks people pretty far away, and they can hit walls, or they can hit through walls into other areas in the environment, which was unique to DOA at the time, and very visually, whoa, this game looks great.
Yeah. Send a guy into a plate glass window, down 100 foot of skyscraper into a weird science lab for no reason.
And it looks like for an Xbox early release, it's probably one of the best looking Xbox games. Of all the Xbox games, it's probably one of the best looking, I hate to tell you.
It still looks great, even, I don't know, I almost want to say compared to even modern gen games 15 years later, because there's just, As Weasel mentioned, yeah, there's just so much detail put into every level, and it goes beyond what you see at first, because not all, but some stages like have cliffs or railings or whatever that with a hard strike you can knock characters past, and it transitions to a completely different part of the arena, different geography and all of that. And
not unlike a certain fighting game involving both blades and the concept of Bushido.
Mortal Kombat?
I think Xerxes is like just fuming with rage right now.
But I just think this is.
I'm serious. Like that is something that happened in Bushido Blade. In the 2 Bushido Blade games, you could, especially in like the cavern levels and stuff, you could knock people down to different levels of the stage.
I don't know how often Bushido Blade really, like, this is a 1v1 fighter that, it was more of a traditional game. It wasn't too experimental. It was like Tekken, but a little different. So
sure, but it had some extra stuff in the environments, I think, is what we were bringing up.
Yeah, no, it's
like the aquarium stage. That's just full of that stuff.
It's a very attractive game. And I'm not trying to make like a they're attractive women. The people in this I never really loved because they go for this very slick kind of pre-oiled look to every human in the game.
You did it again. Pre-oiled? Seriously. Now,
how would you
I don't know. It's hard.
They like lubricated? I don't really know where you want to go with this. They are shiny, very shiny.
They are indeed. I mean, look, this. Does it do anything in the objectification front that King of Fighters hadn't already done? Maybe not, but it seemed different at the time.
I think, okay, well, the main thing that's different is they actually, in Japan, the advertisement for this were pretty serious. You know, they were just like, this is a fighting game, here's some characters, you can punch people through walls and stuff. That's the ad. In the US, and we're suspicious that Microsoft was handling the advertising for this one, but the ads for Dead or Alive 3 are some of the most tasteless ads you will find for video games, especially for ads that were put on television. We've all seen some of the Sega 32X ads, which are really kind of gross. But this ads were basically I don't even want to say like 18-year-olds. These were like 14, 15-year-olds, like just sort of like, why do you like Dead or Alive? She kicks high.
I remember actually seeing that live back in the day, and I think that might have actually kept me away from Dead or Alive for a few years.
Yeah, how many of us like felt that way about it? Like I'm not like gonna say like, oh no, I am not interested in playing a game like this because I'm too good for it. It was more like the crassness of the marketing campaign. I was just like,
I feel like,
to be completely honest, if you were going to buy a game because of an ad campaign exactly like that, you probably would have bought it 5 years ago when Duke Nukem 3D came out.
Well,
the thing is about this one, I think, is that the advertising tone and kind of marketing, and even just kind of gamers in general, set what Dead or Alive was about at this point. Because I think it's mostly a pretty serious game. On the actual internal objectification front, if we really want to go into that sort of deal, it's not really different to other fighters. But the marketing and sort of sentiment about this game was very much like, yeah, they're ladies.
I mean,
like,
what else are you gonna do? Like, you got to do something. I mean, can we really? I don't feel like we're in the position to like say fault them for saying like, you've got to figure out a way of selling this game, advertising executive. Yeah, how is it different from other 3D fighters?
I think it's because Microsoft was going after a specific demographic, and the demographic was kind of the college student. They saw that Sony had found great success targeting that sort of later teen to early 20s, and they went, okay, how do we target that? And they just went, the sex, just sell sex to them.
It turns out like the sex sells thing for Microsoft turns out to be a little bit different, where it's like the Xbox 360 is like, what if we gave players the opportunity to just denigrate women live, like real women?
But the thing is about DOA, so we don't get too far off track, I actually think that the cast in general is pretty neat. You know, like most of the characters in it, both the men are kind of interesting because, you know, you've got You got like the bigger, chunkier guys. You got a Bruce Lee clone, because of course you do. You got the old man character. You got like your normal set of spread of men characters. And then the female characters are all just general ass kickers. Like every single one of them is just kind of like, I'm going to beat your ass and then I'm going to win the tournament, or I'm going to kill the evil guy or whatever. Even like on a scale, like, you know, if you see like Soul Calibur, like Sophidia is like super, super like girly, and it's like, really? Like she's a fighter and she's like, oh, sorry, I hurt you. And, whereas like the characters in DOA are like, oh, I kicked you in the balls? Good.
Yeah, nobody is quite as, like, shamelessly fan service as Mai from King of Fighters, or Ivy, also from Soul Calibur.
True.
So, it's like, the way that the marketing was played just kind of sort of missed the point for what the game was about. But I will have to say...
And it started a spiral that it never got out of.
Sadly, yes. I mean, it's too bad, because... I wasn't as big a fan of 4 because, like, I don't know, something about the gameplay felt different. But when I got around to actually playing 3, it was really a breath of fresh air. It's, like, faster, a little easier to get into than even Tekken, and certainly Virtua Fighter, and somewhat technical, but, like, it doesn't have those stupid, like, 10-hit string combos I could never pull off in Tekken. It doesn't seem as combo-oriented as it is reactive, as just hitting the damn opponent and not stringing together, like, 20-hit bounce juggles, or what the hell the proper terminology is, I don't even know. But it felt like the game didn't really linger so much on that, like it wasn't really required. Like, I don't even know if DOA 3 had much of a tournament scene back around the time when it came out. I will have to agree that this one does feel like it's more easy to accommodate for people who don't normally play fighters. And that's pretty impressive considering the Xbox controller originally was pretty
Oh, yeah.
So.
Fortunate thing is, because the game basically uses 3 buttons, you can play the game with the 4 face buttons and you'll be fine, which means it worked on the PlayStation, Dreamcast, and Xbox, and it works fine.
I'd be curious to hear how, like, as fighting game fans, I kind of trust your opinions, Satenga and Weasel, but, like, I don't know. Well,
no, it's fine. Satenga plays a lot of fighting games, so he's got a good idea.
I'm kind of doubtful of the fighting game fan moniker at this point, but, you know, I'll take what I can get.
I mean, there are not that many fighting games to be a fan of anymore. But at this point, there still were, and it's good. Although I do trust your opinions, I'd be curious how people respond to it. For example, like gay men or women who not because of like the sexism in it, but like I'm just saying, like, just how did did they even approach it?
Does any of it fit their narrative?
Or just like did it appeal to them in any way? Like it has nothing to do with ranking it. I'm just
one thing that I find interesting that I touched on is the male characters in this are actually kind of pretty boyish. They're not like if you take something like Street Fighter or King of Fighters or whatever, most of the male characters are like, yeah, we're strong, cool men, and we got they're like cool men fantasies. The guys in Dead or Alive have never really been that. They're always kind of look suspiciously similar to the girls with smooth skin and pretty boy faces and chiseled to kind of look like they're not the aggressive like male fighting characters that you usually get. They're not like super manpower things. They're actually more like gentle characters, which
in a way they may have not, I don't want to say objectified, but they may have been over-sexualized for a certain audience, but it's just that none of us are that audience, so we wouldn't know.
Because I can anecdotally say I know a couple of women that do like genuinely like the Dead or Alive franchise, because you get relatively like attractive people. It's an approachable game, and the fact that there are a lot of costumes in this one and in most of them is fun, because you're like, yeah, that costume looks great. I actually want to pick that costume and play with that character. That's cool.
I think that's a kind of undersold aspect of fighting games, is like the costume changes now that they can do that.
Yeah, you don't have to animate back when it was actually unlockables instead of pay $5 for. But even color,
even the pay $5 thing. Like let's just think about that. Like that is inclusive or has potential to be inclusive in a way that most people wouldn't recognize because they don't think about it. But there are lots of people out there who would like that. They really like costume changes and the ability to what their character wears means a lot more to them than it might to some of us who might not care and might look at those things as, they're just chiseling the fans to get, it might be different for some people. So
I definitely think it is different for some people. I've got to agree with you 100% there. And I think the fact that it's an approachable game means that there's a surprising audience for Dead or Alive that doesn't really sit in the kind of traditional hardcore gamer narrative or the kind of, I'll say, like, perverts. I don't really know what.
No, I mean, we don't have to do that. Like, I don't want to say like, oh, if you like Dead or Alive, you're son. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like,
they did release. We can't kind of step around the fact that they did release Dead or Alive X shortly after, and it's like, guys, maybe that was a little.
Yeah, that's sort of.
They're just trying to sell games. Give them a break.
Yeah, and it should also be noted. I guess we should also mention the spearhead of Team Ninja, Tomonobu Itagaki, who was a rather infamous persona, to say the least. He kept verbally trashing Tekken.
I really like him. He was a real character. Yeah. I think the games lost a bit of their flavor when he was just like, fine, I quit, whatever.
Yeah. I kind of look at Itagaki as the closest Japanese gaming has ever come to having a John Romero-like rock star.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But even John Romero is his persona is not who he is.
Yeah. No, he seems
actually, there is, if you look it up, and you might have trouble finding it, but there is some footage floating around of Itagaki before he adopted his persona, and he just looks like a random Japanese programmer businessman, and it's really funny to see this guy, and he's whatever, when he was working on DOA 1 or something. And it's just really funny that clearly at some point he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna adopt this over-the-top leather jacket wearing shades wearing cool guy thing, and it's like, what the hell, man? Where are you going with this?
I think there's more respect in Japan for just adopting a marketing persona.
Yeah,
and,
I think that
people recognize, oh yeah, of course it's fake, but it's fun.
I think that's the thing about Dead or Alive. I think it's fun. I think it's mostly fun. I can see you can get offended about elements of DOA, but it is fun. I think. I
don't think it's offensive so much as it is just. I mean, you just gotta. If games were not such a boys club type thing, and if that weren't a problem, I don't think DOA would be a problem, because it'd just be oh, it is what it is. It's doing this particular thing. That's no problem. In the same way that like dating sims are doing their thing, It's just doing its thing. It is doing its thing, and I think that Dead or Alive 3 is where it starts to really do its thing. Dead or Alive 1 is a poor man's Tekken. Dead or Alive 2, it's really figuring out what Dead or Alive is, and Dead or Alive 3, it's okay, we're approachable, we look great, and people are gonna have fun, and that's our game.
Yeah, I mean, say all you want about the TNA, but there is actually a solid fighter underneath all that.
Where do you guys want to put it? Now, I'm just gonna shut up.
Yeah, and listen. This is a tricky one, because it is fun, it is good, it's not that great a fighter. It's a very tricky one. It is a good fighter, but it's not an exceptional one.
That's true. I mean, I do think that, for me, the most impressive thing are actually the stages, and especially the stage transitions. That's what I think is the garnish that makes Dead or Alive 3 stand out above its contemporaries. But while I will say, I did say it's a little easier to get into than Tekken and Virtua Fighter, and yet I don't find it quite as fruitful to play as both of those.
The way I'm seeing it here is that it's definitely a solid game. It's definitely approachable. It's fun. It's really awesome to watch, even if the person playing it sucks, pointing at self. Because the counter system, and in fact just about any kind of action in the game, is so easy to just do by mashing buttons, it ultimately winds up having kind of a low skill ceiling. So you can only really play it for so long before you start realizing, you're kind of just playing the same game.
That I think was deliberate, in a way. They were targeting people who bought an Xbox and they grabbed a copy of Dead or Alive and probably a copy of Halo, and they just play Dead or Alive for an hour or two, occasionally, and that was
they were kind of targeting the same people who buy the Madden games as party games.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, before online matchmaking was the big deal with fighting games, and it was when you review a fighting game now, you're talking about a big part of it is the online matchmaking is not fair, it's not fun, or it's bad for beginners, or it's bad for pros or whatever. like that wasn't an issue at this point, and they were still talking about like couch multiplayer, and I think that the priority was different at that time.
I think this one also like contained a decent amount of content. You know, you can unlock costumes and stuff, so you've got a reason to play single player. Which is good.
There's so much stuff that you can do that doesn't even involve going into the story mode. Like the survival mode is probably one of the better survival modes I've seen in fighting games. Period.
Because you actually get stuff to collect while you're doing that.
I don't look. We've got a great marker point here because we have Street Fighter 3 on the list. I don't think it's better than Street Fighter 3, really.
I would say so as well.
I think it's gonna get pushed down a little bit. So I'm sort of looking somewhere maybe around the Tapper Zookeeper region, maybe?
I'd put it above Alien Infestation. But below Pulseman.
One of the things that I do think is, I don't actually think Dead or Alive 3 is the best Dead or Alive. I think it might actually be one of the weaker ones, to be perfectly honest.
Honestly,
I don't know about you guys.
Admittedly, my experience is solely with the first 3 Dead or Alives. I haven't touched any of the newer ones. But I definitely agree that it doesn't beat out Third Strike solely on part of the skill ceiling argument. As far as it going down as low as below Pulseman, personally, I'd put it above Snatcher.
Can we compromise and say between G.I. Joe and Master of Magic?
That sounds a fair bit more agreeable, yes.
If one more person agrees, we're done.
Hey, I already said like slightly lower than that, so I'm fine with slightly higher than that.
I agree too.
Okay, and we're done. Dead or Alive 3 goes between Master of Magic and G.I. Joe, which means it's ranked at number 54, I think.
I don't know if we'll get crucified for putting it above Master of Magic.
If you care that much about either Master of Magic or Dead or Alive 3, the joke is on you.
It's funny because that was like exactly how I was going to place it.
As long as we don't have as many fans of Master of Magic as there are for Riven, I think we'll be okay.